Ready?
Brilliant. Hello, everybody.
Good evening. Good evening.
You're Laura Knowles. So this
Yeah, and
evening,
you're Claire.
I'm just going to press on the thing and hope that it doesn't play loudly. Oh, it's not. Yay. That means I can see any comments. Hooray. We'll get there one day with our tech and it will be miraculous.
Oh.
Hello.
Hello.
So yeah, it's
we're talking about being a mum, aren't we? Some big hardcore stuff right there.
So yeah, maternal.
We got an hour.
Maternal Mental Health Awareness Week.
We had a bit of a discussion before this, like, what is that? Like fertility? Is that pregnancy? Is that postpartum? What is that all of it?
I don't really know. I think it's actually, new mums, postpartum, the conflicting information. I'll tell you one bit I want to talk about is, so there's a lot of conflicting information, I believe, and I seem to remember. And I personally have a real issue with on-demand feeding. And the reason I have an issue with on-demand feeding is because where's the boundaries? And people saying, well, babies can't learn from a certain age. Yeah, they can. Yeah, we can. Yes, animals learn from the moment they are born. My issue is with where are we teaching children boundaries with things like on-demand feeding? And I think that actually a lot of maternal mental health, there's a variety of reasons for maternal mental health issues, and I think we can cover those. But I actually think part of it is massive overwhelm and exhaustion. And that doesn't just stop when your children are no longer infants. That can be until they're teenagers. But it's overwhelm, it's exhaustion, it's not having a single minute for yourself. It's a whole host of other things. And I have this big issue with on-demand feeding because if your baby cries and you have to stop everything to feed it, at which age do you stop that? At which age do you start saying, no, we actually tend to have meal times, and we don't then have to learn what our different babies' cries mean. We don't have to learn, the children never learn to self-soothe. We're teaching, at which point as adults do we learn when we've got an emotion not just to eat over it? I find the whole thing very perplexing. Now, I know that when I've got some clients who've just had babies and they sort of talk about the latest information. No, it's the latest information. I go, yeah, actually, the latest information doesn't seem to be that different than the information that I was given 17 years ago. I might be wrong, but it doesn't seem to be that different. And I remember having postpartum depression and the whole trying to feed, and to begin with when your milk's coming in and couldn't do, just keep swapping boobs. My mum was like, this is ridiculous. This is just ridiculous. She went, in my day, 45 minutes each boob. And then I read a book where they were like, get the baby to feed, keep the baby awake, don't let the baby fall asleep on the boob. It's lazy, nibbling, they're self-soothing on you. Then actually keep baby awake, do an activity, then it sleeps, and then you have a routine. I just think that a whole lot of it is women not wanting to mess up, being terrified of trusting their own intuition, having to do what they're being told, probably reading the advice of too many specialists, and no boundaries.
There is so much information out there. I am deep in potty training hell at the moment, and so I know I'm in that place where I'm like, where's the advice? How can I solve this? What can I do with this? And I really do know that place of being a first mum, one and only child, and going, what the hell am I doing? And I think it is really, really overwhelming for women today, because we also have this issue that we are going into pregnancy. Often we are stressed. So, I mean, this is a big thing that we look at with our work, is the HPA access dysregulation, which is the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal connection that happens when we're under stress. And this feedback loop, this communication that happens in the hormone system fundamentally breaks when we're under a lot of stress. And we are really under a lot of stress, even if we don't realize it. And the difficulty that we've got when going into pregnancy, I mean, women are amazing. We produce human beings. I mean, good grief. But if we go into that stressed, and I was doing some research around, I was doing a talk on postnatal weight gain. And one of the things that fascinated me, I knew that progesterone, for example, I think is 20 times higher in pregnancy than it is when you're not pregnant. And estrogen is 200 to 300 times higher than when you're not pregnant. But also so are all the other hormones, including cortisol. So what happens is these women, we go into pregnancy and all of this hormone shitstorm happens in our body. And a big reason behind postnatal, postpartum depression is all of these hormones that are at an absolute maximum then come crashing down on top of an endocrine system, a hormone system that is fundamentally broken before you've even gone into pregnancy. Maybe you've been on the pill, maybe you've had low progesterone because you've been so stressed, maybe you've got a compromised gut microbiome from years of antibiotics or years of the pill or eating lots of inflammatory foods, and we're going into these pregnancies. No wonder we're having a hard time with it.
I agree. So I find the mental health awareness around maternal issues it's a really important one. And I also think it just raises the debate around mental health awareness in general. And that is one thing that can tip us into mental health issues. And you're absolutely right, it's part of a bigger picture. Our diets, our lifestyles, it's the same stuff that we talk about week after week after week. And then I just think it's compounded with this absolute terror that we're going to do something wrong and something's going to happen to this baby, which is, that's a mother's fear from time immemorial. But it is absolutely fucking terrifying.
I think one of the things that I really feel the pain around is that often, and I hear it so many times, is the trauma that women go through childbirth. And the difficulty of getting to the other side, and you survive and you've got your baby and everybody is celebrating. And often women feel like they've been hit by a mental health truck and a physical truck, and they're surrounded by people going, yay. And so then put on a brave face and do fine. It's really, really tough. And I think it's important to have these conversations that I wanted to make the distinction between the difference between baby blues and postpartum depression, because the hormone picture that I was talking about, it is quite natural for women. I mean, oxytocin, which is a hormone, it's one of our feel-good hormones that we have in bucket loads through labor and then afterwards with the breastfeeding, that can help with the baby blues. But baby blues are roughly like a week to 10 days afterwards, where a woman goes, oh my God, I'm exhausted and I feel really low and I don't know what's up with me. Oh, wait a minute, I've just had a baby. And the difference between that and postpartum depression is where it's much longer. So it's often months after having the baby, and then there's symptoms of that deep low depression feeling, disconnect from the baby, maybe not sleeping. I mean, there is issues of not sleeping when you have a newborn anyway, but really not being able to sleep when the baby.
Yeah, it's the stuff like you expect the baby blues, because it's like a whirlwind. Even if this is your fourth or fifth child, I imagine it's still a whirlwind, and there's a lot to deal with, and all the washing and the feeding and the stuff and the sleep and all of the things. The only thing, having up my puppy a couple of years ago, I was like, bloody hell, I feel like I'm back in that place. But I wasn't have to do all the washing and the bottle sterilizing and all that kind of thing, all the breastfeeding. So, there's a lot. So I think absolutely the baby blues is the wow, okay, this is where I am. And also the anticipation and the excitement and that first euphoria of giving birth, once all those hormones subside, that postpartum depression is that that wears off, and we kind of then normalize. It's the not normalizing. It's that I am in this pit of depression and I am not getting out. And actually that's the interesting thing with the postpartum psychosis or the puerperal psychosis is it's almost, my experience of that was, it was almost like the high of having a baby, except the high is a psychosis high. It's like just this complete detachment from reality. That was a really interesting experience. I think there's some really interesting things as well that I don't believe, we go on a lot. One of my big issues is the obfuscation and the lack of transparency within the NHS. Now, I'm not saying that I don't think the NHS do a great job, because they do, but I also don't think that we get the right level of communication and transparency. And so it's things like women are going in for their 20-week scans thinking that this is the scan where, you know, I'm going to go for a scan and blah, 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 blah. And, oh, this is the scan where I can find out the sex of the baby if I want to. But actually what they're not being told is, this is the scan where we're finding out if actually everything's okay with the baby. And so suddenly women are going into this scan thinking, I'm going to find out the sex of their baby, and then coming out and finding out that there's signs that their child has a disability or something else. And it's they weren't prepared to be getting that information then. And there's a statistic. I'm doing a U. I've got a statistic. I know. According to The Guardian, 6 out of 7 new mothers in England are not getting a checkup of their health 6 weeks after giving birth, despite such appointments becoming a new duty on the NHS last year. Just 15% of women who have recently had a child are having a dedicated consultation with a GP to discuss their physical and mental health. 85% of the 893 mothers in England who were surveyed said their appointments were mainly about the baby's health, and they did not get a chance to talk to the GP about their mental well-being.
What about the health? Because you get a health visitor. I was in such a daze.
They haven't been having health visitors because of
course.
And the other thing is, I know for me, I had my health visitor, but I was so deeply in an old behavior where I can't describe what I'm trying to say. I've had to learn the hard way about vulnerability, and I've had to learn that saying that I can't cope is actually a strength because of the conditioning that I'd had. So when a health visitor rocked up and asked me if I was okay, and I was deep in postpartum psychosis, I'd trained in mental health. I knew the answers to give her so that she wouldn't think that there was an issue. So even though I was unwell, I wasn't answering those questions because I wasn't going to tell a stranger anything about what was going on for me. It was none of her damn business. So I think
also that perfectionism thing.
I'm fine. And you're a stranger. Why am I going to tell a stranger? And what are you going to do about it anyway? What would they have done about it? I honestly don't know. Counselling, maybe? Antidepressants? Counselling would help me at that stage. I don't know.
The difficulty with antidepressants is often in this scenario, it's a hormone issue. And so just like messing with the serotonin or dopamine, it's not going to crack it.
No.
And also if there are all of the deep-seated issues around perfectionism and terror around being a parent or doing it well, or all the stuff that comes with becoming a mother, antidepressants are just...
I mean, so we're talking about when the child is young, but I think this stuff follows through. And it was interesting, I was talking to my daughter the other day, who of course is 17 now, and I remember when she was about 9 and we were in a hotel room and I went to close the windows and didn't see that she had her hand in the window and her hand got trapped. And I remember shouting at her because my instant panic was, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, are you okay? Are you okay? But it came out, and you often see this in parents, isn't it? It's like when a child gets hurt or falls over, it's like this instant response because it's, oh my God, I can't bear it if anything's happened to you. And so where I'm going with this is I know now I would deal with it in a very different way because A, I'm not depressed. B, I've done a huge amount of work on myself. C, she is now she's past infancy and toddlerhood and she's actually still alive. So I would be much more chilled out about it. But I see women being incredibly hard on themselves and constantly having this fear. I mean, conversations that you and I have had about, oh, and he was really upset about this because he didn't see me. And it's like, we just have all these stories going on in our heads around what it is to be a good mum. And I think back to, and I'm not saying that we should model ourselves on child rearing in the Victorian era, but frankly, back in the day, if a child had clothes and shoes and shelter and some form of, they were taught to read and some form of education, that was good enough. Mm-hmm. Back in the 70s, it's this child-centric parenting that actually, I think the children struggle to then learn how to self-soothe, and parents can drive themselves crazy with it. Because when is it ever enough?
I think one of the other issues that I've seen is that women have desperately wanted and yearned for children. I know this is part of my story, to fill a gap in themselves. And then when the baby is born, this realization that, oh, hang on a minute, the baby was never the answer. The gap in me was the answer. And it's one of the things that we really work with personally and professionally. And one of the big questions that I ask in the clinic when I've got a woman who's dealing with any fertility issues is, what is that baby going to give you? Because if we can find that answer within ourselves, then if the baby comes or if the baby doesn't come, it takes that pressure off. When we have these expectations, like you said, the child-centric world, if this child is going to fulfill me on every level, so much pressure for the child, and it's never going to happen. That child is going to be able to live up to that.
And how many people say, I want to have a child to be unconditionally loved? Well, I'm telling you, in 17 years, my child has not unconditionally loved me. She has needed food, and she has needed attention, and she has needed stuff and things, and she has needed discipline, and that's not unconditional love. My dog gives me unconditional love, and really all I have to do is put food down and let him out a couple of times a day. Like that there is no such thing actually as unconditional love. Not really, not in that context. That's somebody needing something from us. Actually, what our child does is love us from a place of security and conditioning. And so, the belief in unconditional love is because our parents may well have done and said awful things to us, but we still love them. But that's actually coming from a primal need for security. That's not unconditional love. So when we learn to give ourselves unconditional love, we can have children because we actually want to raise a child.
Mm-hmm. And that's where I got to. I got to a stage of, I want to have the experience of raising a child. Oh my God, it is the...
What was I thinking?
There is so much growth in it. There is so much growth in it, which is great.
It's not just an experience like going to, an immersive restaurant or something. This goes on forever.
Oh, it is one of the most intense learning experiences of my life. And I'm deeply grateful for it because I do feel that there is a maturity that just kicks in when you have a person who is dependent on you forever. So it is. The other thing I wanted to talk about is that women often go into pregnancy quite deficient in some of the key vitamins and minerals. This is another thing that we really work with. So if we have a woman who's coming in and they're saying to me, okay, I'm planning on having a baby, I'm like, brilliant. let's get all of the good stuff in, let's get the stress down, let's get the vitamins and minerals and macronutrients in, and let's get you in a really good place, because making a person is actually quite an intense experience on the body. So one of the big things that we see, magnesium, do we talk about magnesium in every single talk that we do?
Every talk, and protein.
I learned something really interesting this week, is that I was doing a blog on the bowel, and the bowel has always been known for like sodium, potassium, but recent studies as they discovered that the bowel also has a role in magnesium absorption. We knew it.
We did know it. I love that.
But magnesium, I think, plays a huge role in pregnancy, in muscle relaxing, in growth. Magnesium is definitely
psychosis, depression, zinc production, everything, all of the things. Yeah, absolutely. So the way that we would do this is absolutely about preparing your body. Then it's so easy, isn't it, when we're, especially in that sort of first or third trimester, when you're tired and can't be bothered, or when you've got a newborn, to grab takeaways. This is the time to feed your body properly, and especially if you've just had a newborn or you're about to have a newborn. Batch cook. My mum's pretty old-fashioned with stuff like that, so it was, you know, she was telling me, even when I was so huge I could barely stand on my feet, she was like, batch cooking, and my whole freezer was just full of little portions of things, so it was just really easy to have, you know, reheated soups and shepherd's pies and just a load of good old-fashioned food for once the baby was born. Literally the first 6 weeks I'd pretty much catered for myself, so that was really easy. That didn't stop me getting depression, but I was quite broken before I went into pregnancy, I think. So yeah, but being really, really prepared, and preparing your body absolutely with supplementation. And you know,
I also love the people in my life who rocked up with food that first week I had a child. Come on in. The people who ate my food, off you go. The people who came with food, which is that community feel of, I think that new mother feeling of, oh my God, feeling held by your community and being fed, I think is a really, really important, health cushion.
Yeah, really. So yeah, asking for help, being supported, getting help if there is, you know, absolutely finding it if you can. If you haven't got family or close friends, then finding, you know, as much support as you can out there. And then there is this thing that we talk about a lot, which is it's very hard to parent another human if we aren't parenting ourselves. And I remember just staring at this child who needed something from me, and I couldn't give it to her because actually I didn't have it, and I had to learn how to give it to me first before I could give it to her. And so this is why I say that however awful my postnatal depression was, you know, I didn't love my daughter. I didn't people used to ask me if, you know, are you loving being a parent? I'm like, nope. I like the fact that my child is on the planet, but I hate being a parent, because I've never been able to lie particularly well. So that was kind of the truth. But what I learned was she deserved a mum who really loved her. I deserved to know what it was like to really love my child. And so I had to go on that journey to learn self-love, self-care, boundaries, heal my wounds, to be able to love her, to be able to give her whatever she needs. You know, that was the journey. And so it's so easy to get bogged down in pregnancy and reading baby books. Actually, maybe that's the time to be doing some self-work too, to make sure that you feel comfortable, confident. And I know that you've talked about during your birth, because you'd done so much self-work, that when things started to go a little bit south, you were like, I've got me, I'm resilient, I am resourceful, I have the emotional tools. No one else is going to be in charge of this labor. I'm going to be in charge of this labor. And, you know, I certainly didn't have that. I was led from pillar to post by the different professionals, and ultimately that's what led to my illness.
Yeah. Well, I had a birth experience which was nothing like I planned. I had a lovely water bath in my front room that never got used. Thank you, emergency C-section. And then I also went through a miscarriage at 12 weeks, which I think is massively underplayed. Like, people don't talk about how huge a miscarriage is. Like, my miscarriage in places was more painful than my actual childbirth experience. But I agree is that I went into both those experiences, and like, if I look back on my history, like anxiety, fear of being out of control, fear of what might happen was a big thing throughout my 20s. And so going through experiences like that, if I'd gone through those experiences without learning how to hold myself and to know that whatever happens, okay, Laura, surrender into this, you've got this. If I didn't have those tools, I don't know what those experiences would have been like. I don't know how traumatic they would have been if I hadn't supported my health, so I could actually come off the back of it. I had massive blood loss in my miscarriage, and also all of the emotional fallout. I mean, I was so, I remember the day after I miscarried, and I honestly felt like I'd been hit by a truck, but I had the tools to stick myself back together. And so grateful to be able to go through those, to go through life experiences and go, okay, got this.
And ultimately, yeah, and I hear you. And I had a situation with my daughter the other week where she had to phone me in a bit of a tears. And because of those tools, I'm able to be, as much as I don't want my child being in pain, I'm able to be incredibly calm, incredibly objective, goal focused, supportive. You know, I can use those tools on her, and it's absolutely life changing. And I couldn't be without them.
I'm the same, like going through the like he's 3 at the moment, and going through the potty training stuff, and he's also having some challenges at nursery. And so like, we had a massive tantrum at the weekend, and the way that I was able to hold the space for him, the way I was able to tune in with what was going on for him and respond and be able to navigate it and not go into my stuff around like getting shouty or any of the stuff that tantrums can trigger. I was like, okay, I'm just going to give space to what is happening and support him to get him into a place where he's able to cope with what's happening. Yeah, oh, they're invaluable, these lessons.
Yeah, really.
I think the experience of parenting, when there is a trigger that, and there are triggers that happen, that our children are absolutely designed to trigger our stuff.
Hells yeah.
And so if that is happening, then the first thing to look at is ourselves.
Absolutely.
It's not the
Absolutely.
child.
Yeah, no, of course
They're
not.
just little mirrors.
And don't we hear that so often? Oh, they're little shits, or oh, he's like, okay. You know, my child had challenging behavior and some learning challenges and was tough, and I mean violent challenging behavior. But that's not like that was her challenges, but also she was partially like that because of the experience of having a mum who was postnatally depressed. I'm not saying that learning challenges, you know, she wasn't born with some of them. I actually believe she was, but they were exacerbated. So me shouting at her, or you know, or calling her an idiot, and she never did, but you know, any of that kind of stuff wouldn't have helped, because she had learning challenges, she had learning, you know, and challenging behavior. It was just going to make the situation worse. Just because then you're triggering children's insecurity, and then that's going to put them into even, you know, different spaces. So yeah, we're really passionate about supporting women with this stuff. The mental health isn't just a mental issue, it's also a physical issue. We have to look at balancing hormones, we have to look at diet, we have to look at the depleted soils. We talk about this as a whole health issue always. For everything we talk about, it's the same thing. It's a whole health issue. So we're really passionate about supporting women with that. I would say if you're thinking of getting pregnant, do our symptom assessor, check out which hormone pathway is unstable. We have a list of what supplements you can and can't take if you're pregnant, and you know there are a lot that you can take and there's some that you can't. I would say definitely do that. If you've had a baby, get on the symptom assessor, get those hormones balanced, get them balanced now. If you have mental health issues and you're feeling the struggle of this, do the symptom assessor. And if you then are interested or have the time, space, headspace to start to do the work, then I really recommend Reclaim Your Life, our 12-hour emotional program, because it is a game changer.
Mm-hmm. Teach you how to parent yourself so that you can parent others.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. So, no comments on our Facebook page. So come back to us with any comments. We'd be really interested to hear your experiences, anything that you've got to say. And yeah, well done, mums. It's a tough job.
Yeah. Keep going. Keep swimming, Dory.
Brilliant. We'll see you next week.
Bye.